I haven't drunk any water in a while. I'm feeling pretty thirsty. Does this mean I'm going to immediately die of dehydration? Of course not. The cells in my body can sense and respond to external stimuli, like thirst. So how exactly do these cells respond to external stimuli? Cells receive chemical signals, which they translate and magnify inside the cells in a cascade of events, which then ultimately leads to a physiological event. This is called cell signaling, or signal transduction. There are multiple types of signal transduction, but they all have three basic steps: reception, transduction, and response. It all begins with the ligand. Ligands are external chemical signals, such as hormones, growth factors, steroids, and neurotransmitters that bind specifically to receptors. Ligands and receptors are complementary in shape, similar to a key fitting into a lock. So where exactly are receptors located? Well, this depends on the mobility of the ligand. Imagine this is the cell and the nucleus. Ligands that are too large to pass through the plasma membrane use receptors on the cell surface to get their message across. Some major membrane receptors are tyrosine kinase receptors, G-protein coupled receptors, and ligand-gated ion channels. Ligands that are small enough to pass through the membrane bind to their receptors in the cytoplasm or nucleus. Binding of a ligand causes these receptors to undergo changes in shape. So what happens next? Signal transduction is similar to falling dominoes. One small change leads to a chain reaction. The ligand-activated receptor activates another protein, which activates another protein, and so on until the protein that produces the final cellular response is activated. So how exactly does activation occur? One mechanism is by phosphorylation, which involves removing a phosphate from adenosine triphosphate, ATP, and adding it to a protein to activate it. This activated protein then goes on to activate even more proteins. This is called a phosphorylation cascade. Second messengers like cyclic AMP and calcium ions relay and amplify signals from the receptor to specific molecules. Cyclic AMP, for example, activates phosphorylating proteins like protein kinase A. So the signal has been amplified and tons of proteins have been activated. Now it's time for cellular response. Most types of signal transduction result in protein synthesis, or physical changes to a cell that ultimately lead to cellular activities, including cell division, cell differentiation, apoptosis, and nerve stimulation, and much, much more. This is best explained with an example. Let's go back to the problem where I'm thirsty. My body senses my thirst and secretes a hormone called vasopressin from the pituitary gland in the brain. Vasopressin travels to the kidneys and binds to cells that line the tubes that carry water and dissolved waste. Vasopressin binds to a G-protein coupled receptor called V2 receptor. This stimulates a subunit to detach and bind to an enzyme called adenylate cyclase. This enzyme converts ATP into cyclic AMP, which then activates protein kinase A. Activated protein kinase A approaches a water channel protein called aquaporin 2 and transfers phosphate from ATP to the aquaporin. Once activated, the aquaporin inserts into the plasma membrane and water is reabsorbed from the urine and concentrated urine is produced. Thus, vasopressin signaling helped me to conserve water. Why is signal transduction so important then? Almost every disease or disorder in the human body occurs due to some form of malfunctioning of signal transduction. Signal transduction is not only essential to keep us alive, but to maintain our bodies in a perfect state of balance. Thanks for watching.